in the breads. No breads?
George and Jeff talk to Goofy. Hello and welcome to another In the Hot Seat with Communicore Weekly. This week we are joined by Bill Farmer, better known as the voice of Goofy, everywhere. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. We're both really excited to talk to you because we're both huge Goofy fans. So this is fantastic. So I guess my first question is, have you been doing voices all your life, or is this something you started doing later on in your life? How did you just get started in voice acting to begin with?
Well, it really started just kind of as a lark back when I was a kid. I found out I could kind of do impressions, and back then, I think the first one I ever did was probably Don Adams on Get Smart, and I just kind of just tried that once. My friends say, "Hey, that's kind of cool," you know, and then I started trying movie stars and stuff, and in those days there were a lot of westerns, so I'd do John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart as well. I'd try and do those voices, and then Gordon, Mr. Dungeon, there you go, you know. All of these characters on television. I found out I just kind of had a little talent for doing those, and my friends thought it was great. So when we were older, we would drive through places like Burger King and order, and I'd like a Whopper with cheese, and Arnold the pig would like a Coke, and they'd look out, and it was just a gag thing, and it kind of took off, really.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So what was Arnold's favorite meal at Burger King?
He liked the fries and a Slurpee as well. About everything he ate was a Slurpee.
He probably did stay away from the bacon burgers.
He didn't like those too much. Or the pork rinds either.
So it's pretty obvious that these voices, all of them, pretty much find their way into your everyday life at this point, even since you were a kid. Do you find yourself slipping into voices all the time just naturally, or is it a conscious effort not to do it?
If I travel, more with accents, if I travel, I did an OzCon down in Adelaide, Australia last year, and I after a while you start talking more like that, you know, you start asking Fosters and all of that sort of thing. You know, it just creeps in after listening to that, and sometimes unconsciously.
That's great, yeah. That's one talent I do not have is impersonations or anything else like that at all. Read a little bit about your bio and, of course, followed you for years with what you've done with the Disney voice work. But who would you consider to be one of your favorite voice artists of all time?
Well, when I first came to Hollywood back in 1986, I took classes from Daws Butler, who was one of the greats of animation. He was... Yes. For those that don't know, the voice behind most of the Hanna-Barbera characters. He did the old Yogi Bear, you know, and Exit, States Left. And he always did Captain Crunch, too. Captain Crunch stays crunchy, even in milk. And he did all of these great characters. And it was so nice when I got out here, people said, well, why don't you take classes from Daws Butler? And I said, like the Daws Butler? Yeah. So they gave him his phone number, and I called him, and he said, well, come on over on Wednesdays, and we always sit around and kind of come up with stuff and teach you acting. And he was the one that really ground into us that we are actors, not just funny voice people, that the acting is what leads the voice as opposed to the voice being the most important part. He said, the voice, you got the instrument, it'll be there, but learn to act with it. And that's what makes a really good voice actor as opposed to just an average one.
Like most actors, you become the character as opposed to just doing the silly voice for it.
And it's no difference between an on-camera actor and a voice actor, except that there's a camera there. But the techniques are pretty much the same. A little bit more, you go a little bit more over the top with animation character, depending on what the character is, but it's a little more heightened reality because you don't have the camera, so you have to portray everything using only your voice. And so it's a little different technique, as in play acting is different than like movie acting. Just minor adjustments, but it is all acting.
Kind of along that same lines that you were just saying, how you kind of have to exaggerate it a little more when you're voice acting. Is there a more challenging aspect of voiceover work as opposed to acting in front of the camera? Something else, perhaps, or...
Challenging? Well, it's the fact that quite often you do not have the other actors in the room when you are recording. always on camera. You have the other actors. You can play off of their intonations and their facial expressions and all of this kind of stuff. You can play back and forth. But a lot of voice acting, especially at Disney when I'm doing Goofy, they don't have Mickey in the room with me, or they don't have Donald in the room with me. So if I'm doing Goofy and, Mickey says, gosh, let's go to the moon, Goofy. And I was like, gosh, let's go. I'll get the rocket ship, or whatever. I have to just imagine the way that Mickey would say that because he's not in the room with me. And I just do my series of lines, and I have to get from the director, how close is Mickey? How far away? Am I yelling down to him? What's my attitude on that? And you just have to all do that in your mind because you're just lonesome, you and a microphone.
Well, before you moved to Hollywood, you had worked in a comedy club in Dallas, I believe, or not in Texas. Excuse me, it wasn't.
Yes,
in Dallas,
actually, it was in Dallas. Yes,
it was in Dallas. It was in Dallas. So, making what made you want to pursue stand up?
When I was a kid, and you'd watch shows like in those days, it was like Ed Sullivan, and I always loved the comedians, and I'd get record albums of George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby, and I just thought that was great, having fun. It just sounded like so much fun. And when I lived in Dallas, there was a comedy club called the Comedy Corner. And, the house comic there was a guy named Bill Engvall, who's gone on to great things, of course, with the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. And it was on a Tuesday night. They had an open mic night where you could go up and just do 5 minutes of comedy. I went up and did some voices and got a pretty good response. And Bill said, hey, you ought to think about maybe trying this. And I came back the next week and the next week and the next week. And over the following months, I kind of started doing little gigs at Rotary clubs and country clubs and things around Dallas. And in Houston, I'd go down to their comedy club. And then I started hitting kind of the comedy circuit at clubs around Texas. And it just kind of became a career. And I decided I was going to give a shot to it because when I was a kid, I was just enamored of movies and television, and you get to a point where you say, gosh, it's a very scary thing to do, but if I don't try it, I'm going to kick myself when I'm old because I never tried it. So I figured, well, I'll give it a few years and see what happens. And luckily it worked out pretty well.
After that, just sort of packed up and decided to move to Hollywood? Or?
Yeah, in 1986, I decided to move out here, and my wife said, you ought to get a place out there and just see what you can do. And I was traveling as a comic then and just starting to headline at clubs around the country. And as luck would have it, about 4 months after getting in Los Angeles, my agent said, do you do any of the Disney characters? Because they were looking to solidify. At the time, they had maybe 4 or 5 Mickeys, 4 or 5 Goofies, a guy down at Disneyland, at Disney World, a guy that maybe sang for their record albums. It wasn't set in stone who was the voice of Mickey or Donald or Goofy. And they had a big audition, and out of about 1,000 people or however many tried out for Goofy, it was just a great voice print match for me, and they liked it, and they've been using me since, I think it was January, 23rd or 6th. Oh, I have to look that up.
I was like, it's still pretty impressive if you know the exact day.
About late January 1987 is when I did my first role as Goofy, and now I've done about 3,000 different jobs for Disney over the years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
not just Goofy, but you've been doing some other characters as well.
Absolutely. Right. Today I was in a session on a new series that hasn't even premiered yet. It won't for about a year and a half, called the 7D, as in Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, yes. I've heard about this.
And I am Doc in that series. And we have a wonderful cast. We have Billy West. We have Maurice LaMarche. We have Steve Stanton. We have Kevin Michael Richardson. Tom Ruger, who did Animaniacs, developed it and created it. Kelly Ward is directing it, who directed me in Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. And it is an ensemble cast. So we get to sit around, about 6 microphones and just do it as a radio play. And it takes longer than it should because we crack up all the time.
It's like us when we record a show. It's pretty much the same thing. But I guess you could find that easier since you have them in the room with you to play off of. So I'm sure things might change a little bit, and you can play off of each other's personalities as opposed to sticking directly to the script at that point, I assume.
Absolutely. And that's a lot more fun, too, because you're with friends, you get to laugh, and you get to have fun. But when they're so professional that you've got to be on the top of your game because they're so good that they're going to really hit their lines and just boom. Like a lot of the sequences that we did, we would do maybe a page and a half of dialogue. They'd take one scene, and we'd just run it. And a few times we'd just pick it up once, maybe we did it once or twice totally, and then moved on, which is with a less talented cast would maybe take 4 or 5 takes or something like that. But with these guys, they get it right the first time.
Now, because of your comedy background,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how strict they are, but is there any room for ad-libbing or adding stuff to the script as you go on when you're doing the voiceover work, or is it all very rigid, like it has to be this to fit the animation we're going to do?
No, you can play with the lines a little bit. Usually they'll do at least one take where it's as written, so they have that. And it might, since we quite often don't get to read the whole script beforehand, we don't know if a way of saying one line might interfere with something later on. So they usually, at least, you do one take as written, and then sometimes you'll get to play a little bit. And a lot of the stuff we throw in can't be printed anyway. So.
I feel like I want to see those versions of the cartoons, though.
A lot of stuff that doesn't make it out of the building,
That's a different version of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Absolutely.
That is for sure. You mentioned earlier when you first auditioned for the voice of Goofy, and I'd read about this as well, that there was never one voice for Mickey or Goofy or Donald in the parks and everything in commercials. It was all strange. So with coming into that, did you find, was there any major difficulty with assuming the voice of Goofy? Taking on this history and the heritage?
It was, at the time, I was kind of, green and naive about how big a deal it was. I knew it was cool. I didn't know how cool it was or how iconic this character is. I knew he'd been around for a long time, but I didn't quite get how rare these characters are. Goofy has been around for 80 years this year. There's only a handful, and they're all, the Disney characters are about the only ones that have been around that long and are still being used all the time. And, I've just been very lucky. If I did a great Popeye voice, I'd be out of work because they aren't making my cartoons. So even if I did the best one in the world, I'd be out of work. So I've lucked out really with a wonderful character, and Goofy was my favorite Disney character as a kid. So that's even makes it doubly sweet.
And did you do Goofy at all before the audition just for fun, or was this just like, let me try it and see what happens?
You always try voices. And just to play with them, but it was never in my comedy act or in my stable of impressions. But as a kid, I would try and do the laugh, which I found kind of fascinating. And so I had that already down a little bit. And I think that helped me in the audition because that's such an integral part of the Goofy character.
The laugh totally threw me off, too, because that's always my favorite part of Goofy.
Yeah, I try that laugh all the time, and I just cannot even get close to it. So there's no fear at all of me moving to Hollywood and saying yes.
Good.
I know you're panicked, a little bit of worry there.
I was.
Well, are there any other big characters that you've been working on with Disney that we might have known or seen, but maybe not?
I've done a lot of characters with Disney over the years. I'm also, of course, when you hear Pluto bark, that's me. So of the other Fab Five, I'm 2 of the Fab Five, although it's an unusual character, and doing Pluto is actually more difficult than Goofy because it's more plosive and it's whoa, whoa, and it's rough on your throat if you do that for a long time. And we keep Pluto to the end of sessions, so if I kind of blow out my chords, I can I don't sound like I'm the Godfather. And let's see, a lot of other characters I've done. Of course, now I'm Doc of the Seven Dwarfs, of the classic Seven Dwarfs. I did Sleepy whenever they needed that. Horace Horsecollar never had a voice until the movie Prince and the Pauper. I got to create the voice for him. Who had a voice that was kind of halfway Jim Backus and kind of, Ben Stein, you know. That was an interesting process because I got to make up that voice on the spot when we were recording. I was to do Pluto and Goofy, and they needed a voice for Horace. And the director said, well, Bill, do you have any ideas? They want him to kind of be aristocratic and a little snobbish. So I was kind of thinking that Jim Backus on Gilligan's Island. And then kind of droll. So I was thinking Ben Stein from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And so we kind of put the two together, and that's kind of the voice it came out with. Over the years, I've done a lot of incidental voices, definitely for a lot of the movies. Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Bugs Life, Monsters, Inc., Beauty and the Beast, Hunchback Notre Dame, Cars, where I would go in and there's a process called ADR, which is you're putting dialogue into an already existing movie. A lot of people don't know that we don't have any of the animation in front of us when we do a cartoon, that we are just looking at a script. It hadn't been animated yet. They animate to the voices. Then you go in and you add incidental voices, crowd scenes, maybe re-loop a line that they changed one word or something like that. For example, in Toy Story, if you see when they're at the Pizza Planet, you know, I'm the mission control voice saying things like, T-minus 29, 28, 27, you know. Monsters, Inc., the little yellow CDC guys running around, a lot of that was me. And
Wow, that's
in
awesome.
Bugs Life, I was an ant, and I think I was a slug that said, hey, get out of here, would you? You know, in the Bug City. And it's funny, sometimes I don't recognize my own voice. In the movie Shrek 2, I saw that with my son, and there was a scene toward the end where there was a party at the castle. And they introduced, you know, and there was a big ball, you know, and so there was a voice that came on, and it was me saying, ladies and gentlemen, introducing Princess Fiona and Prince Shrek. And my son said, hey, Dad, that's you. And I forgot I did that. A lot of little things pop up, and I don't even remember what I did on them.
Because there's so many. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that your son going with you see the movies, and of course he's in a rock band now, you said.
Yeah.
But when he was of a certain age, did he really ask you to do the voices a lot, or ask for phone calls with the voices?
No, he thought it was like everybody did this for a living. We were down in Florida once, and his grandfather said, well, Austin, I got to go off to go to work now. And he said, well, what voice do you do? You know, oh, Hollywood kid, okay.
I do the grumpy grandpa. Thank you very much. That's fantastic.
See, I'd be having you like prank call my friends in different voices.
So, it was funny. It got to be kind of cool for him when his friends thought that me being Goofy was cool. And one year, I think he was around 12, he wanted to see a Goofy movie again with his friends, and he wanted me and Jason Marsden to kind of do the, tell us about the recording. So Jason came over, and we watched the movie, and we said, well, this was the first thing we did in the movie, and I remember we had, some other lines or, and just talk about the process of creating a movie. So I knew I was pretty cool when that happened.
So you have obviously a very large resume voice acting wise. Is there anything else that you're doing nowadays in front of the camera, or is it strictly voice acting now?
I do stage work. I am in Fred Willard's sketch comedy group called the Mohos. Wow. It's to basically keep stage acting alive, because there's no better training than doing something live in front of an audience. There's no pity laughter. A live audience lets you know really quick if you're connecting with them and what is funny and what isn't. And live acting is definitely the best kind of training, and so I still do that all the time. And we put on plays at the Second City Theater about once a month. We write sketches. It also keeps the writing skills up, and it's just a blast, too, to work with Fred and all the people down there.
Yeah, some big names that you've worked with. Well, I guess being in Hollywood and Disney, of course, you expect that.
Yeah.
With one of the things that we're excited about is the upcoming Epic Mickey video game release.
Yes.
And assuming you did a lot of work on the first one, you've been doing a lot of work on this. How is the process different for a video game versus an animated film or other voiceover work?
It can be. There are video games that a lot of the main characters have tremendous numbers of lines. I remember when I was doing, for Disney, Kingdom Hearts, all of the Kingdom Hearts games.
That's true. It's a big character.
Yeah, you're in different worlds, and you have all these different lines depending on what the player does. There's different lines if he goes out this door or that door or goes this way or that way. So you have to cover all those bases, and there can be hundreds and hundreds of lines. I remember, I think it was the second one we did. I recorded on that about 9 or 10 days.
Wow.
Wow.
And that was interesting because it was originally done in Japanese. So I was hearing the Japanese Goofy listening. I was listening to that in my headphones, which is very weird in itself because he studied my voice to learn how to do the laugh and how to do the... But it's odd to hear these characters in other languages, especially Goofy, because he's kind of a cadence character is what I call, where it's the scooping and, "Gorge, how are you doing?" But in Japanese, it's like, "Oh, doishi maiko, ocho." It's really strange.
Wow.
It was funny. I also learned that the Japanese actor had broken down the laugh into 3 distinct parts. He learned it part by part. Like the way you learn the laugh is like it's, "Oh, yeah," but he broke it down into, "Oh, yeah," it's like, it sounded very robotic. So he would laugh, "Oh, yeah, oh, yeah." It was very odd to my ear.
Very bizarre.
Like a cultural, cultural thing with their phonemes. Wow, that is fascinating. I never thought about the foreign voiceover work as well.
Disney generally translates about everything into like 42, 43 different languages. And there's a whole division of Disney that does nothing but goes around the world. And if they have a new animated movie, they got to find all of those characters in 40-some different languages. And once it was funny, they called and said, "Bill, there's some guys from around the world that want to, some of the other goofies that want to go to lunch with you." So I had
I was going to say, it's like a Goofy convention.
It was really strange. I got to go to lunch with the Chinese and the Norwegian Goofy. And that's really, really strange to hear their takes on it. Goofy has a kind of a rural accent, kind of a country, and that's different than most places in the world where there's nothing that translates like that. And the Norwegian was really strange because even when he would speak English, it had that, "Oh, golly gee,"
Really oh, that's good. Sorry.
Wait, we have to back up for a second. Do you know Norwegian and like Japanese that you're just saying these phrases out like this, or?
No, I don't know any of those. No.
Because I'm super impressed with that stuff right there too.
A long time ago when I started doing Goofy, they came to me once and they said, "Bill, we can't find anybody in Germany that can do Goofy well. We want you to do it." And we got a German professor who's going to teach you phonetically all the lines, and it was looping to some old cartoons. And I had about 150 lines to do. And the woman that they got, I don't think she'd ever seen a cartoon in her life.
I get Goofy falling out of the airplane. He is not killed. What is this?
Don't worry about it. So we go into the studio, and it was like a 12-hour session, and I'm going, "Lines 5, right," and all this. And I had to do it 2 pictures, so I had to do it in the same length of time that the Japanese, the German guy had done it, and kind of with the same inflection. Well, we got through this. They got it back to Germany, and I asked later on, said, "Whatever happened to the German thing that we did?" And he said, "Well, it was good, but you had a Bavarian accent." And they hadn't thought that the German teacher that they got me was from Austria, so her German was different than the German. And so they finally had someone that could get close enough to do Goofy. So,
well, that was going to be my next question: is did they ever ask you to do it in a different language? So I assume in German, was that the only attempt so far?
Well, personally, I'll say 1 or 2 lines in most languages I can get away with.
Okay.
Buenos dias, or something, but not too much beyond that, or I really butcher the language.
And then, yes, there's an international incident, of course, with that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about... With thinking about doing the voice, are there restrictions on what you're allowed to do with the voice? I'm assuming you're not allowed to go to a birthday party and get paid $5,000 to just do Goofy
No,
impersonations.
no, no, no. Disney owns the character, and so
Okay.
I treat the character with the respect it deserves. He deserves, and so they're pretty cool about it. I can't do anything commercial like radio station promos or anything like
Ah,
that. I can't do those kind of things because that's endorsing something, or I can't say, buy some Coca-Cola or something like that. So you just have to be judicious in the use of the character.
gotcha. You don't want to get in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
quite.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Do you have a favorite Goofy role that you've done so far, or are they all pretty much on the top of your list because it's Goofy?
No. There's I'd have to say a Goofy movie is
Oh,
my
I
favorite.
love that film. Yes. Yeah.
It really turned out great. It was since it was a kind of a father buddy type of picture. My son was about 4 or 5 when that came out, so he was just kind of getting the idea of what I do, and he really. It was kind of weird because we went to some premieres and people would interview him, and they say, "Well, then does that mean that Max is your brother?" And said, "Well, I thought I was an only son." I don't really know. I think he was quite confused for several years. But,
Oh, that's
I
good.
love that movie. We got to add a lot of layers to Goofy and emotions that he hadn't done before. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, my both of my boys still crack up with the Bigfoot scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Love that film. Love that film. So
That was Frank Welker who did the voice of the Bigfoot in that.
Actually, just out of curiosity, just because we interviewed her in the past, but when you go to Disney World and you turn on the TV, they have the top 7 things to do, hosted by Stacey J. Aswad, or I'm sorry, I forgot, Aswad, yeah. And she's a big voiceover person too. Do you happen to know her at all? Just out of curiosity.
I'd have to, gosh, the name is somewhat familiar. I probably have met her over the years. I can't picture her right offhand, but I've met so many people down there and through the industry, it's very likely. Somewhere along the way I have.
She does a show called Voiceover Weekly, I think it's called, with somebody else.
Oh, yes. That's who. Okay. Yes, I have done their show. I
She's
believe
super
so.
nice.
Yeah, she
We like
really is. She is great. Yes. I went over to their studio, I believe, to do that one as a Voiceover Weekly. Yes.
oh, well, we actually just had a comment come in on Facebook, which surprised me because we asked people to give us questions, and
Sure.
a friend of ours named Teresa Corey wanted to know who's your favorite character, I guess, to play against or to act with, maybe in a scene, even though you may not be there. Who do you like working with? I guess character to character.
Gosh, that's if you mean just Disney characters, I really miss and loved Wayne Allwine. Was probably my favorite.
Oh.
He was so funny. What you got to hear of him doing Mickey was maybe 5% of the talent the guy had. He was a great person, a wonderful friend, and unlike any of the other studios I've worked with, the Disney folks have been more like family. Really have been like family, and see him socially and that sort of thing. So it is like a big happy family over there. And he was so much fun to work with. He'd just crack you up, and it was a joy to work with him.
Do you get to go to the parks often, or do you kind of stay away from there?
No, I love going to the parks. I don't get
good.
down there as much as I should probably, but usually whenever someone comes in town and, hey, can you get me into Disneyland? I
Of
get
course.
that a lot. And
Of course.
okay, I'll take you. Okay.
Yeah, I've got my Goofy pass. Lets me take everybody in.
Uh-huh.
We do what we need to.
Do you have a favorite ride there?
I like the fast ones. I just got back. I went on the Disney cruise ship not too long ago, and I spent about 3 days just running around Walt Disney World. I love the fast ones. Of course, Space Mountain, Indiana Jones. Pirates is. I always go on Pirates just because.
It's a classic. How can you not?
It's really a class. And the Haunted Mansion.
Oh, of course.
In Florida, Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror. Soaring over California is a great one. Gosh, there's so many of them. My favorite. Wow. If I had to pick one, I just got either Pirates or the Haunted Mansion because it's just classic Disney.
Of course. I think you've nailed both of our favorites
like,
right there on the head.
Good choices. Good choices.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So I think it'd be interesting if I guess Mickey's PhilharMagic is probably the latest incarnation of Goofy in a theme park.
Yes.
I think if there's been anything else recently, I'm just racking my brain.
Yeah, there's what is Goofy's Flying School, which is down.
Oh, at California Adventure. That's right.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Great Goofini is down at Walt Disney World, and of course PhilharMagic, and we do stage shows from time to time.
Of course, the parade voices if those are in there as well,
and games and all sorts of stuff.
So I guess when you walk into one of the character or the merchandise shops or the Emporium or something, and you see the Goofy T-shirt, you kind of walk by and smile or think, "I've got to buy it," or somebody please buy this, please somebody.
Yes. Well, I have plenty of. I don't have any more room for a lot of this stuff. But there are a lot of favorite ones, and the talking ones, of course, I have around the house here. And it's kind of weird to hear a toy speak like you. It's just odd.
You could give that away as a gift. Yes, here, so you won't forget me. This is
absolutely
me right here. Jeff, anything else you wanted to?
No, I am out of questions. Do you have any questions?
Okay. No, I think this was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
My pleasure. My pleasure, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us. We both really appreciate it. I know we had a little scheduled conflicts a little bit there, but I'm glad that we made it work. We're both super excited to talk to you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks. I'm glad we were able to do this.
Before you go, is there anything that you want to promote or tell people to go to?
Well, I also, for the last few years with my son, I teach acting and people that want to get into the business, and I always have new people moving out here all the time need some guidance because it's a crazy, wacky kind of business. And as a former engineer at some radio stations, I have a technical background as well. So we produce demos so I produce demos and teach acting through my website, toonhouseinc.com, TOONHOUSEINC.com. And I'm on Twitter, so if you want to see, I write quite frequently on what's going on at Goofy Bill.
I am going there right now.
I was going to say, we're definitely going to go follow that as soon as this conversation's over.
Okay.
Well, thank you very, very much again. We both really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. This was great.
I hope so. Thanks so much.
Hit him with the woke drive, Scotty. I'm the hot seat. Too hot to touch. I'm in the hot seat. Take it to the bridge.